Our keynote speaker today is Tonya Butler, and I would like to tell you a little bit about Tonya. She's an accomplished educator, attorney, administrator, and motivational speaker. She is the department chair for Berklee's Music Business Management Department. She's the first woman and first person of color to lead that department in its 30-year history. She's also a course author and instructor with Berklee Online. Any Tonya Butler students out there? All right. Well, anybody who has the good fortune to study with her, I highly recommend it. She holds a Juris Doctorate and a Master of Laws in Entertainment and Media, is a seasoned veteran in the music business with more than 14 years experience as an entertainment attorney and record label executive. She has 20 years of undergraduate and graduate level teaching experience, having previously held positions at Minnesota State University, University of Memphis, and the Los Angeles Film School. Tonya authored the self-published career guide, ready for this title? The Music Business is Corrupt, or Maybe You Just Can't Sing. It's available on Amazon. And she previously hosted a weekly podcast, which I enjoyed very much, called The Bomb, which stands for Business of Music Boot Camp. You can check it out. And in that podcast, she shared her honest, straightforward perspective on the music business and the legal side of the music industry. Most recently, Tonya co-authored a MOOC, How to Make Money with Your Music Copyrights. She co-authored it with Berklee alumnus, former trustee Josh Gruss. So that's a nice way to experience a Berklee Online, not instructor-led, but free and really great information. So it's on Coursera. Just search for Tonya Butler and you can find it. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Ms. Tonya Butler. Please join me in welcoming her.
Woo!
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Hey, what's going on, Berklee Online? Good morning, everybody. How are you today? If you don't know anything about me, one thing I am always is transparent and honest. And I'm not going to give you a speech today. I'm going to tell you a story. That's number one. And number two, I'm usually a jeans and sneaker kind of gal, so I bought these shoes just for you. Yes. So make sure when you take pictures, you get the shoes. The first thing I want to do is this working? Yeah, I want to thank Debbie Cavalieri and Sean Hagan for everything they do with Berklee Online, but in particular for inviting me here today to give this talk. I'm really excited. And it's a really, really important topic that I'm going to talk about today. It is how to survive your first day of school. Now, I know what you're thinking. Most of the time when we talk about our first day of school, we're talking about our first day of kindergarten or maybe preschool. I don't want you to think about your first day of kindergarten. I want you to think about your first day of anything. Whether it's your first day moving into your new house, your first day at college, your first day on a new job, just think of it in that context. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some tips, some lessons, I like to call them, on how to survive those first days. Because believe it or not, we have a first day every day. So with that in mind, I have to give you a little bit of background and a little bit of context first. This is me. This is my favorite picture of me now. But it wasn't always. And the reason it wasn't always is because on the day I took this picture, I was not my perfect self. What I mean by that is my mother, who used to do my hair, she used to press my hair, straighten it, and put in bows and matching barrettes and ribbons and all sorts of fancy stuff. She'd also buy me a new dress or a new outfit for picture day that matched my ribbons and bows. On this particular day, though, my mother had to work, and I was with my grandmother. Now, my grandmother had arthritis, so the best she could do was to brush my hair into 2 Afro puffs. Okay, fine, that's one thing. But I also didn't have a brand new dress, and even if I had, There's no way my grandmother would have allowed me to wear it. She was old-fashioned. So what she did was she made a dress for me. So not only am I in Afro puffs, I'm in a homemade dress. And it's hard for you to tell from this picture, but I'm missing a tooth and my lips are chapped. So I was not my perfect self. And for a long time, when I would show my school pictures, I would never show this picture. It wasn't until years later that I learned how to embrace my authentic self. Because I'm not perfect. No one in this room is perfect. I'm missing a tooth now. And whenever you start something new, you really have to know who you are. You have to know yourself enough to know what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. And you gotta love yourself first before you do anything else. So, the picture was taken around the age of 7-ish. And that age is the age where everybody always asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And every kid has an answer. They want to be a nurse or a doctor or a policeman or a fireman. I had an answer. My answer, however, was based on a vision. It was based on a vision. I saw myself as not a doctor or a fireman or a policewoman. I saw myself as an actress, a lawyer, a teacher, and a politician. This is true. And you might be wondering, well, how does a 7-year-old get the idea that they want to be an actress, a lawyer, a teacher, and a politician? From TV. From TV. My grandmother, as a lot of elderly people do, watch a lot of TV. And back then, when I was growing up, we had this big console TV that sat on the floor. We didn't have a remote control, so I was the remote control. When my grandmother wanted to watch TV, I had to sit on the floor in front of the TV so I could change the channel. And my favorite actress of all time was Cicely Tyson. I loved me some Cicely Tyson. Later, I fell in love with Whoopi Goldberg, and all I ever wanted to be was an actress. But from watching so much TV, I also wanted to be many of the roles they played. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be in front of a courtroom, in front of an audience. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to have an influence on the lives of young people. And I wanted to be a politician. So, back to the list. I had a lot of naysayers. Surprisingly enough, many of those naysayers were my teachers. You can't be an actress, a lawyer, a teacher, and a politician. You can't be all four. But I was determined because I had a vision, and I saw myself being an actress, a lawyer, a teacher, and a politician. You couldn't tell me different. As a matter of fact, I am fortunate enough to say now, I have been an actress, and I am a lawyer and a teacher. And because I'm a teacher, I'm involved in politics all day long. All day long. So, the next lesson is for you to cultivate your vision. Cultivate your vision. Keep it fresh. Don't let anyone deter you from what you see yourself being. Because although it may be true, you can't be an actress, a lawyer, a teacher, or a politician all at the same time. Or maybe you can. Maybe not at the same intensity or the same level of success. Maybe one's a hobby, one's a full-time job. But there's nothing that keeps you from doing everything you want to do. So cultivate your vision, which is something, unfortunately, well, no, let me take that back. Fortunately, I didn't do right away. Because when I graduated college, first thing I did was get my real estate license. Actually, that's not the first thing I did. First thing I did was I went to a bank and got a job as a bank teller. Hated it. Quit. Then I went and started doing billing collections for a chiropractor's office. Hated it. Quit the day before I was about to get fired anyway. And then I got my real estate license so that I could become a real estate agent. Now, mind you, I'm going to go back a couple of slides. You don't see real estate agent nowhere on this list. But I did it because Maybe I was afraid. Maybe people were telling me, you got to have a backup plan. You're not going to be able to support yourself as an actress. Law school is too expensive. It takes too long, too much education. Yeah, I was afraid, and I took a detour. But what I learned from that was to forgive myself, because I was beating myself up for taking that detour, for not cultivating my vision. But then I realized the detour helped me better understand the vision, which was meant to be. Everything else I was doing, I was not meant to do. That's why I was so unhappy. That's why I kept getting fired. The vision is what I was supposed to be doing. So when you do find yourself on a detour, forgive yourself. Even embrace the detour. It's there for a reason. So here I am, and as a real estate agent, hating it, decided to quit. But before I quit, I enrolled in law school. I had to go part-time, though. I had to go part-time because I needed to work during the day. And that is where the next lesson comes in, which is to be proactive. Don't just sit there, do something. If you're not happy, fix it. Change it. So if I'm not happy being a real estate agent, what do? I got to remember the vision. I wanted to go to law school. I went to law school. I did community theater during the summers. And I also changed my job. I used the real estate license to start doing property management. Now, property management is where we would manage single-family homes for owners who lived out of town. So we would collect the rent and do all the repairs and stuff like that. And I really actually enjoyed that. It wasn't part of the vision, true, but it paid the bills. And I didn't get fired. This is where the real story begins. So I worked 9 to 5 during the day, and I signed up for law school in the evenings from 6 to 9. That was my week, Monday through Friday. One of my jobs while at the property management firm was to take the rents we had collected that day and deposit them into the bank. On the one particular day I had to make my deposits, it just happens to be my first day of law school. Most exciting day ever for me. So here I am, I get the rents, I'm on my way to the bank. Bank closes at 5, class starts at 6. I have plenty of time to get to the bank, get something to eat, get to class. When I walk into the bank, which at exactly like 4:57, I'm totally running late. Literally, I have to barge through the doors of the bank. When I walked through the doors of the bank, everything started to slow down. Literally, things started to move in slow motion. And I started to look around. First thing I saw was a man lying on the floor. Next thing I saw was a woman on her knees trying to hide her purse behind a potted plant. This is a true story. Next thing I see was another woman crying. Then I saw a bank teller behind the counter with her hands up. Another bank teller stuffing money into a duffel bag. And that's when I saw the man with the gun. I had literally walked in on a bank robbery. This slide needs no explanation. Don't panic. Don't panic. This was one of those old school banks that used to have the counter in the middle where you fill out the deposit slips. So the first thing I do is I immediately duck behind that counter. And I start to think. My imagination kind of starts to run away with me, right? Because I grew up on TV. So all I could think about was men with machine guns, making everybody lie on the floor and empty their pockets. All I could think about was I was about to be taken hostage, taken to a getaway car, and then off to a helicopter. Fortunately, it was not as bad as I had imagined. As I hid behind that counter, I could still hear. There was just one guy, just one gun, and I started to feel a little bit more confident. Not that I wasn't afraid of the gun. Not that I wasn't afraid, because I was afraid. But I didn't think to scream or else he'd hear me. I didn't think to run because I presumed that he had not seen me when I barged into the bank and ducked behind the counter. If I had tried to run, he would have seen me. And being a woman of faith at the time, I didn't even think to pray. All I could think about was to fight. I thought about fighting. Now, mind you, I had another vision during this time too. I had another vision. The vision wasn't that I was going to be harmed in any way, that I was going to be shot. I didn't think that I really would be taken hostage and thrown out of a helicopter. What I envisioned was going to law school, not just in general. That night, I envisioned going to law school. Now, fortunately, my grandmother taught me about this trick. Anybody from the old school remember this? I'm a Gen Xer. You take your key and you put it in between your fingers so you can use it as a stabbing device, right? Now, mind you, I do not advocate fighting a bank robber, and I had no intention of doing that. If he had asked me for the money I was carrying, which, by the way, was about $8,000, $9,000 in rent receipts, I would have been happy to give it to him. Had he asked me to empty my pockets, I would have been happy to do so. But had he asked me to get into a car and drive to the airport to get into a helicopter, oh, I was going to fight. I was going to fight. So the next lesson is to be prepared to fight. Just because you're in a bad situation, or it even looks like a bad situation, don't give up. Be prepared to fight, even if you don't want to fight, even if you don't have to fight. In the words of rapper, it was a Q, not Q-tip, DJ Quik, thank you. If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So be prepared to fight. Now, fortunately, I did not have to fight. I did not have to use my makeshift stabbing device because the thief ended up jumping over the counter and running out the side door of the bank. We could hear a car screeching away, so he probably had a getaway car waiting for him outside the bank. We found out 3 days later, when I say we, I mean those of us who were in the bank, that the guy got picked up trying to rob a Taco Bell. And according to the papers, he got more money from the Taco Bell than he did from the bank. I digress. So at the end of the scenario, the bank manager goes around and asks each of us, are you okay? Are you hurt? Are you all right? He then proceeds to go to each door of the bank and lock it. He made an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope everything's okay. I know this has been a very harrowing experience. No one is allowed to leave the bank until the police arrive. No one is allowed to leave the bank until the police arrive. So I'm like, wait a minute. I got somewhere to go. This is the first day of school. That's how excited I was. I can't miss the first day of school. I got to get out of here. So I'm, following the bank manager around, and I'm whining, and I'm complaining, and I'm like, I gotta go, and I don't wanna wait for the police, and I didn't see that much anyway, and what's the big deal? And that's when I learned patience. Everything happens the way it's supposed to, when it's supposed to. Just be patient. So I sat my butt down. We waited, because apparently they didn't even call the police till after the thief left the bank. I waited, I sat, the police came in. Of course, they went to the bank manager first. They went to all the tellers. They interviewed them one by one by one. Last person in the bank, of course, was me, so I was the last person to be interviewed. And I shared what I saw. All I saw was the man laying down and the lady trying to hide her purse behind a plant and the other lady crying and stuffing money into a duffel bag. I saw the gun. Once I ducked behind the counter, I didn't see anything else. So this is what I shared with the police. This whole process of interviewing everybody took about 45 minutes. Remember, I got to be somewhere at 6. So, and it took a little while to even get to the school. So I go anyway. It was a huge classroom, and I had to kind of scoot, past people and laptops to get to my seat. A little embarrassed, a little flustered, but I went anyway. And the professor at the time, I'll never forget him. He was writing on the board at the time that I was trying to sneak quietly into the classroom. He looked over his shoulder at me. He looked at his roll book. Then he looks back at the chalkboard and kept writing. You're Miss Butler, I presume. Okay, so now I'm on the spot. I hope you have a good excuse for being late to the first day of class. Good excuse? Without hesitation, I stand up and I say, yes, sir, I'm sorry. I actually just witnessed a bank robbery and I had to wait for the police to take my statement before I could leave. Do you know, this man didn't even look at me. He went right back to writing on the board. Didn't say a word. So at the break, which we took about maybe half an hour later, I have some of my classmates come up to me. Some of them were laughing like, oh, that was a great joke you told. That was a great comeback. Others of them could see that I was a little flustered. They didn't know me, but you could obviously tell I was in some sort of distress. So I did share with them the actual story and that it was true. The lesson I learned was to just show up. I know I don't have many students in the audience today, but if you can only imagine the kind of teacher I am, when somebody says, oh, my laptop broke. Oh, I had to go do this. Oh, I missed that. I'm not the best at accepting excuses because I went to class after witnessing a bank robbery. So if I can show up, you can show up. But not only that, he marked me tardy that day. And do you know, I did not argue the tardy. You know why? Because I was late. Doesn't matter why I was late. It doesn't change the fact that I was late. I was late. Yeah, I had an excuse. It could be an excuse tardy, but nonetheless, I was still late. I was accountable even though what happened had nothing to do with me. So I survived. This is where I wanted to plug in that Gloria Gaynor song. I will survive. I did survive. But when I think about it, in the scheme of things, I actually survived a lot. I survived my house being broken into. I survived my car being totaled. I survived the loss of my mother. And when I think about survival in those terms, not only did I survive, you survived. If you're in this auditorium today, you survived COVID. Many of you may have survived the loss of a job, the loss of a loved one, a family member. Some of you survived a divorce. Some of you survived a marriage. But we've all done it. And believe it or not, what we did it with were the very tools and the very lessons that I learned in the middle of that bank. First, you loved yourself. Maybe not right away, but over time, you figured out who you are, what's important to you. And you loved yourself enough to know what you were and were not willing to do to pursue your passion, which is what all of you are here doing today. You also stuck to your vision. Sure, you may have had some detours. Absolutely. You had some detours. But you remembered why you decided to study online, to take that class. You remembered. And then you forgave yourself for the detour so that you could move forward. You also did something. You enrolled. You signed up for a class at Berklee Online. You signed up for a certificate, a degree. You did something. You got off your butt. You made a change in your own life. And you moved forward towards your vision rather than away from it. You also didn't panic. Well, maybe you panicked a little. But you remained calm. And you knew that just because things weren't happening quickly didn't mean that they weren't happening. And just because things weren't going your way didn't mean that they eventually wouldn't go your way. You prepared to fight. You got ready and you stayed ready. You know, the biggest fight we have on our hands today is not for our physical safety, although we are fighting to maintain our physical health. Every day we have to fight to protect our mental health. We got to fight to stay sane. We have to fight to be able to deal with some of the things that we deal with on a daily basis. We have to protect our sanity, our peace of mind, our joy. I'm one of those people, if there's no joy in it, I'm not doing it. Because I fight to preserve my joy. You were patient. You knew it took some time. You knew it was going to take some time. So you patiently waited. Many of you are still patiently waiting for your payoff. I'm here to say if you woke up this morning, you got one payoff right there. And then finally, you showed up. Whatever that first day was, whether it was the first day of a class or whatever it was, you showed up. You may not have been feeling good that day. You might have not wanted to go. You may not have been motivated, whatever it is, but you showed up anyway. This is what I learned sitting on the floor of that bank. These are the things I learned. These are the things that I carry with me throughout the day. I remembered what I survived, and then I realized that you survived too. And every one of my students are surviving something. And no, it doesn't have to be as harrowing or as traumatic as a bank robbery. But you did survive it. And for that, you deserve your props. So give yourselves a hand for surviving. Give me a hand for not being thrown out of a helicopter. And for wearing these shoes. Thank you.